Just waiting for the live stream, and our clerk is almost there. And you were mid-answer, if I'm not mistaken, or oh, Councillor Sullivan was asking a question. We're not going back to you quite yet because we're waiting for the live stream, but Councillor Sullivan, we will go back to you once we have formally reconvened the meeting. Yeah? Okay. Okay, so I'll return to Councillor Sullivan, who was speaking prior to our unplanned interrupted break. Go ahead, Councillor Sullivan.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor, and forgive me if I repeat anything because I can't remember what I already said and what was still to be articulated. So my interpretation of variance applications and for the Committee of Adjustment members is to have the flexibility to make exceptions to the rules or the policies when there are variables presented to us that warrant the variance to be granted. In May, on May 13th, I was willing and moved to grant the original request at 0.76, if I got that right, meters. And I'm still agreeing with that, sticking with that decision for a number of the reasons that were already brought forward, but in particular merits is that this shed would be hidden by a solid fence. It doesn't interfere with any sight lines, so I don't see that there's any risk to traffic, utilities, all of the reasons that were presented by the applicant. And the variables, given the topography and the shape of this lot and the position of the house on the lot, it to me makes sense to have this building where it is. And having more than the 0.76 would render it with either a 2 foot, a 4 foot, or a 6 foot stretch between a solid building and a solid fence, which would be very hard to maintain. I dare say you couldn't even turn a lawnmower around in there. And it would be, to me, a waste of space. So if we're talking about good land use, I don't think that that's good land use when we typically have smaller lots than we used to have. And using every bit of your lot, to me, makes sense. So for all of those reasons, I believe that I would like to see the original request for the variance be granted because I believe it does meet the tests and meet the 4 tests for a variance. So I would move that we grant the original request.
Okay, so then I will look for a seconder to at least get it on the table at this time. Deputy Mayor is seconding. So the motion to approve the relief proposed in the original application is now on the table, and I will acknowledge speakers. And I would like to say I want to thank Mr. Mosher, who provided some additional clarity in regards to the 4 tests, so we can get there on that. But I obviously will recognize comments from council colleagues. Go ahead. Councillor Strachian.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor, and perhaps just sort of general comments about this without casting a vote at this stage. Complaints from neighbors. You don't get complaints today, you get complaints tomorrow. Some people get complaints because they don't know their neighbors. It's not necessarily a reliable test as to why something should go forward. I do understand your point when you make that, but I think from my perspective, yes, complaints would lend a different tone to the request, I guess, but not, an absence of complaints doesn't do the opposite necessarily in my mind. I think perhaps from the staff perspective, lots of photos. I'm pretty sure you could have found more photos in Equinel of non-compliance. I'm not sure what that says and what can be done about that, and if it's something that needs to be done or something that needs to change within our own regulations to be more flexible, maybe particular to corner lots where there are no sightline challenges or anything like that. So I think it's a bigger conversation outside from this particular request. I do thank you for your very methodical way of going through this and addressing each of the concerns and doing your research. And it's unfortunate that a compromise couldn't be achieved between yourselves and staff. But thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, Councillor Strakian. Other comments at this stage of the game? Anything else from staff? I understand that in regards to the 4 tests, because of the information brought by the applicant this evening and the subsequent discussion, I would assert that I believe the 4 tests have been met, but I'll look to the mover and seconder to further elaborate if they wish in regards to ensuring that our potential approval, should it pass, give some consideration to those 4 tests. Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. More to the comments that Councillor Straker-Yan made, 2 wrongs don't make it right. So the fact that there are 9 other properties with the same situation where their garden sheds or accessory buildings are close to the lot line doesn't mean that this one should automatically be approved. What I'm suggesting is that perhaps we look at changing the policy with respect to this, given the reasons that, you know, if it's not interfering with sightline and it's appropriate for the topography and the shape of the lot, that perhaps we need to readjust what those setback requirements are for such a building in the future, so that people don't have to come for a variance for something like this, because it's certainly something that's desirable. That's just my own. And if they were coming ahead of the fact to ask for permission rather than forgiveness, in a sense, I would have the same opinion as I do now. I would want to grant the relief.
Indeed. Any other comments, Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I'm in favor of granting the original application because I believe it's truly minor in nature, and that's fundamentally where I stand.
Okay. All right. So if there are no other comments at this stage, colleagues, I'm going to call the vote. So all in favor? Okay. It carries. Thank you. Appreciate the efforts of staff, of course, who work hard and diligently to do their part in this process, but also appreciate your time and energy and efforts. So best of luck to you.
I want to say thank you. Appreciate your time and consideration.
Okay.
We're
Thank
both going
you.
to sleep a lot better too.
Indeed. Good luck with your garden and other plants. So colleagues, we are going to proceed to adjournment. We are going to take a 2 to 3 minute break just to transition between meetings. It just won't be as long as we had intended, given the interruption of our Committee of Adjustment meeting. I think we are at adjournment, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. And that, look for a mover and a seconder then in regards to the adjournment. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Strakian. And the motion is that the meeting of the Municipality of North Grenville Committee of Adjustment will now adjourn at 7:48 p.m. And I'll call the question. All in favor? Great, thank you. That carries. And again, we'll take 2 or 3 minutes to transition. Thanks. Okay, colleagues, we're going to start again. We're calling our council meeting to order at 7:59 p.m. This meeting is being held in council chambers, and I'll look to a council colleague to read the land acknowledgements for this meeting, which is distinct and separate from the meeting we just had. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The municipality of North Grenville acknowledges that the municipality operates on the territory of the Anishinaabe. We recognize all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples who now call North Grenville their home. We respect and support the need for cultivating a strong relationship, and we commit to Indigenous-informed decision-making to foster the path towards reconciliation.
Okay, thank you. Despite the late hour, staff have prepared some notes for us to highlight to the community, so I'm going to try to do those quickly. Just a reminder that this Sunday, Found and Foraged will celebrate its grand opening. Found and Foraged features a collective of makers of local products. It's a wonderful shop and has a really interesting array of goods that are produced and sourced locally. So I'd encourage you to drop by this Sunday for their grand opening. The Kemptville Farmers Market continues each Sunday. Obviously, it's one of the most exciting places to be in the community. It's at the B&H parking lot, as we all know, and hours have changed to now take place from 11 to 3. The community dinner program is going strong on Tuesday evenings. It's an opportunity to gather with neighbors and strengthen community connections. And we'd also like to note that the Kemptville Street Piano program will return downtown to the library a little bit later this month. Just a couple of other notes. The North Grenville Mental Health Initiatives Fund has extended the application intake to July 6th. If you are part of a community group, organization, or initiative working to support mental health and well-being in North Grenville, certainly there still is an opportunity to apply. Also, I'd like to highlight that the Small Homes Legacy Walk and Bike-a-thon is taking place this Saturday, June 13th at the Kemptville Campus Greenhouse. Registration is at 8 with a walk and then a barbecue. Shalom Small Homes, as you know, is working towards a next build for rent geared to income units in our community. So this is just a small representation of the many different things that are happening in North Grenville, but I wanted to make sure that we had some of them on our collective radar. With that, I'll look for the adoption of the agenda, and I will need a mover and a seconder, Councillor Sullivan and Councillor Strachan. Thank you. Do you have any comments or concerns about the agenda, colleagues? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All in favor? Thank you. Next is declarations of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. And of course, this is in regards to perceived or real financial benefit or loss arising from tonight's meeting. Are there any declarations? Seeing no hands, we'll move on. Now we're going into public meetings. There were 3 this evening, colleagues. The first is in regards to Town Line. Council will now hold a public meeting to consider an application for lands located at 395 Town Line Road, requesting the lands thereof to be rezoned from rural to rural industrial and rural commercial holdings, C6H. Obviously, this meeting is an opportunity to voice any objections or concerns you may have with respect to the proposed bylaw amendment. If an appellant does not provide oral submissions at this public meeting or written submissions before council adopts the proposed amendment, the Ontario Lands Tribunal may refuse to consider any objections. Any persons who wish further notice of the council's decision obviously can contact our planning staff. And I'd ask if there are people here for this public meeting. I presume so. Correct. Okay. So with that, I believe, Ms. Martin, we're passing this file over to you for a staff presentation. I will note that Ms. Martin has certainly highlighted to me that we can hear public comment this evening without necessarily coming to a decision, of course, at the discretion of the council table. Obviously, the function of public meetings is to get the benefit of a staff presentation and also to hear from members of our community. So we'll start with Ms. Martin. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I also want to note because while Mr. Bongard, who is an agent or of the applicant or representative of the applicant, is not physically in the room, he is online and can hear us. So when we get to the portion of the meeting for public comment, he is available to answer any questions that council may have or that may arise from comments or questions from members of the public. So good evening, members of council and members of the public. Tonight's zoning application for council's consideration is for the property municipally known as 395 Town Line Road. The property owner has applied to rezone their lands, currently zoned rural, to a rural industrial, rural commercial zone, which is our C6 zone, implementing a holding symbol provision. The holding symbol will list the requirements for a future site plan application and agreement that would be required to be established prior to permitting a use on the property, as well as list the required studies that would be necessary to submit as part of that application. The property is just over 15 acres in size. 5 of those acres are under crop hay production, and the remaining 10 acres are forested. The official plan designates the property as rural, but it also identifies on the natural heritage layers that there is an unevaluated wetland on the property, which comprises the majority of that 10 acres of forested area. As described earlier, there is the implementation recommendation of a holding provision, which would require an environmental impact assessment to evaluate these wetlands as part of a future development application for site plan control. So we'll just walk through the slides. This is just an aerial view that shows the area that's under cultivation for hay production currently and the forested area. If we look to the next slide, please. This is the official plan designation of the property. It is designated as rural. There is a very small sliver at the bottom that bumps up into the aggregate layer just to the south. I do note that the hatched area across the street, both on the west side of Town Line Road and the north side of Van Buren, that's our economic enterprise designated land. So those lands are designated for employment type uses. So your heavier industrial or commercial type uses. And as we've seen, there is some development within that area. If we go to the next slide. This just details our natural heritage constraint layers. Those dark lines that you see run through, those are related to our wellhead protection areas. And as you can see through the hatched area on the property, that identifies the approximate location of the unevaluated wetland. And as mentioned, a condition of the holding provision would be that an environmental impact study be provided to evaluate the wetland, and then the recommendations from the study would be incorporated into a site plan agreement. Next slide, please. And this is the zoning map for the property. As you can see, there is a mix of rural zoning in the area. To the south, there are the white area where you have the 4 smaller lots. Those are residential uses. Those have a rural zoning. But the majority of the lands to the north and the northwest have an industrial or commercial zoning. Toffmar is an industrial development subdivision. You got multiple industrial uses there. Next slide, please. So as part of the review of the application, staff undertook a policy review of the provincial planning statement, the United Counties official plan, and our own official plan. In regards to the provincial planning statement, the staff report provides a full detailed analysis of the policies within, and I do list the relevant policies that apply to this application on the slide. Included within these policies, there are policies related to our rural areas. And it identifies that our rural areas are diverse. And policies within the provincial planning statement are supportive of promoting a diversified economic base and providing employment opportunities through goods and services. The provincial planning statement also includes policies related to natural heritage. This includes that natural features and areas shall be protected for the long term. And as noted, one of the requirements would be for that environmental impact assessment on the unevaluated wetlands. When we go to the next slide, relevant policies considered under the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville's official plan are provided, and these policies are established at a regional level. Policies at the counties levels are very similar to the provincial planning statement in that they are supportive of creating a diversified economic base in the rural area and supporting employment opportunities through goods and services. The county's official plan also establishes additional policy considerations for rural and commercial and industrial uses, and identifies the requirement for local municipal official plans to establish additional policies within their local official plans related to commercial and industrial uses in the rural area. And in the county's policy, they identify areas to be considered, including traffic, outdoor storage, screening and buffering, and the requirement for site plan control to address land use compatibility and land development. And then similar to the provincial planning statement, the county's official plan also has provisions in relation to natural heritage, which again is that unevaluated wetland piece, which would be required to be studied. In our own official plan, many of the policies mirror the county's. However, we do provide a little more specificity, especially in section 4.3C, which is our rural, commercial, and industrial land use policies. The rural area policies do permit the establishment of commercial and industrial uses in the rural area, but they provide more nuances to the requirements for what needs to be considered when you are establishing a new use. This includes matters related to access, traffic, buffering, and screening, parking and loading spaces, signage and outdoor storage, as well as that the use be placed in a separate zone category, which is what the ask is before council this evening, is to rezone these lands to that pre-existing C6 zone. Site plan control is also a requirement for commercial and industrial developments in the rural area. So if we go to the next slide, as of today, there is no proposed use specifically identified for the property. The applicant is seeking to rezone the lands to establish commercial industrial uses. So I do not have a concept plan for council this evening that would be able to measure against these metrics from a performance standard perspective as established within the C6 zone. What I will say is that if there are any deviations that go into these performance standards, so say they're looking for a reduced setback, that would require an additional Planning Act application. Next slide, please. And so in regards to the details of the zoning request, the zoning request addresses the policy requirements that were outlined within the municipal official plan. The proposed zoning would place a holding provision on the property that would require, prior to development occurring, various studies to be submitted as part of that site plan application. And this includes a traffic impact study, an environmental impacts assessment, stormwater management plan, photometric plan, a site surfacing plan, which would also include a terrain analysis and hydrogeological study, as well as drainage and grading plan. And additional studies can be requested through further pre-consultation with the municipality. If we go to the next slide, please. So I want to note that at the time of report submission, only one public comment had been received, but since that time, additional comments have come into the municipality. I do want to note that all comments have been circulated to members of council for their consideration, as well as the applicant and their representative this evening. We received comments from the following individuals in writing: Christine Rootliff, Greg Walsh, Greg McCloskey, Abraham Skoughton, Jenna Cameron, Finn Vanderlinden, and a summary of the comments that were provided related to a variety of different topics. One was traffic, another was compatibility between uses and nearby residences, concerns in regards to increased noise, lighting, and potential environmental impacts, the cumulative effects of additional industrial development in an area already experiencing industrial pressures, long-term loss of rural character, devaluation risk to existing residential properties, impacts to Town Line Road and the Van Buren intersection. This includes traffic speeds and noted the variety of different modalities that are used on Town Line Road, including walking and cycling. We did not receive a letter of concern they had no objection from Enbridge Gas. We have a letter of no comment from the Ministry of Transportation as these lands are outside of their control area. Public Works provided a comment that a future traffic study would need to include verification that the roadway could accommodate a proposed use, as the surface width is approximately 6.5 meters. A traffic study would evaluate these intersections and could make recommendations for improvements. The proposed zoning amendment already provides for that provision that the holding would require that traffic impact study. And then we received emails of no comment from bylaw and building services. So if we go to the next slide, it is staff's recommendation based on our policies that the proposed zoning amendment be approved as enacted by bylaw. At this time, that concludes my presentation. I am happy to take comments or questions from member of council. And I do want to remind council that the representative of the applicant is available online.
Okay, thank you very much. So council colleagues, before hearing from members of the public, I will ask if you have questions specifically for Ms. Martin or the applicant at this time. I believe Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Director Martin. I understand at this point in time that the rationale for asking for this change is because of the proximity to existing industrial uses. Is that correct? And we're going to require a site plan control because there is no specificity in terms of what the property is intended for?
Through your worship to the deputy mayor. So site plan control would be a requirement regardless of where a commercial or industrial use is established. It's defined both within the zoning bylaw and within the official plan. In regards to intent, perhaps Mr. Bongard can speak as to the intention as to why they want to add these uses. Certainly being located adjacent to existing lands that are developed for industrial and commercial purposes is maybe one of them, but I would defer the intent question to the applicant's agent.
If I might, can I address that question to Mr. Bongard? Mr. Rene, you're looking for a zoning bylaw amendment to change, and the justification is that the proximity to existing industrial uses. Do you have what our comprehensive bylaw says is permitted uses are in 40 or more. There's a huge list here. Can you narrow that down? Can you let us know what the intended use is, or do you just want to change the zoning bylaw in order to increase the value of the property and sell it?
Yeah, can you hear me correctly? Am I speaking loud enough?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm the representative of the owner. The owner is actually my father. So our intent is, my father's, getting up in age and he'd like to sell the property. He doesn't have a use for it. Neither myself nor my sister have expressed any interest in the property. So in preparation for selling it, and we used to live actually right at the corner of Van Buren and Town Line for decades. So we're very familiar with the area, and the precedence that we see that has been set, what you alluded to here a minute ago, is that the properties on both sides of Van Buren have historically, going back at least half a century, have planning for commercial on either side of Van Buren Street. And as Van Buren Street eventually got expanded and pushed all the way past Town Line and used to end there, it got pushed all the way to Highway 43. Continual zoning of that area for commercial industrial use has occurred. So we're just trying to match the peers, similar properties, again, on the north and the south side of Van Buren, to get our zoning up to what the majority of the other properties along Van Buren already are.
Thank you. If I can make a comment. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So you would understand the concerns of residents not knowing should that we grant the bylaw amendment, because in that list of 40 plus permitted uses for the new designation or the new zoning, it would include an abattoir, which is a lot different than a specialty food shop. And I wondered, I guess this question is to Director Martin, is there a way that we can approve the amendment but limit the permitted uses? Is that possible?
Through your worship, to the deputy mayor, certainly if it's council's prerogative to send stuff back to look at the list of permitted uses with the property owner, I mean, that's council's prerogative. So we could come back with an amended bylaw with a pared down list of permitted uses, but I would want to have that discussion with the applicant as to what their desire is, whether it's to still seek the full list or perhaps maybe a pared down version of the rural commercial, rural industrial C6 zone.
Thank you.
Do you want me to answer that?
If you're prepared to limit that list to something that might give comfort to your neighbors, I'd appreciate it. But if it requires a conversation with the planning department, you
Maybe I
can
will
do that.
step in here. Certainly, we can ask the applicant for his perspective on what the intended use might be. But before we go there, I would like to ask Ms. Martin a question. I know that we've encountered this situation before where property owners want to achieve a certain zoning before selling their property, which creates its own vulnerability because, of course, while you can limit the uses, it's still, I think, fairly wide open in regards to what the specific proposal could or would be for those lands. Certainly, council has no obligation to rezone. I understand that the staff recommendation, of course, for policy reasons would be to proceed with the rezoning, but certainly nothing would prevent the future owner of these lands from coming in seeking that rezoning if in fact it wasn't adopted this evening. Can you just explain that process, Ms. Martin?
Thank you, Worship. So the municipality has an application on file. I'll explain planning process. It is an active file. It's been deemed complete. We are now obligated under the Planning Act timelines. After 90 days without a decision, the applicant can appeal the municipality on non-decision. Council can choose to refuse the application. They can choose to adopt the approve the application. You could defer as well. I know council's very familiar with all the processes available to them. And if you're deferring, provide us with the expectation of what you'd like to see coming back. If council refused it, and it's up to the applicant to decide how they move forward with that application under the guise of the Planning Act. But any future property owner could come forward, even if they were successful in rezoning the lands, and ask for another zoning category to be placed on those. We review them against the policies that exist under the rural designation. That's where it was deemed appropriate that a rural commercial, rural industrial, which is that special zone category that the official plan speaks about, is the appropriate zone category for this. But an applicant in the future could come forward with a different application seeking something extremely specific on the property. We've seen it from time to time where a property is rezoned and then changes hand and another property owner comes forward and changes again.
Okay, thank you. And then to return to the Deputy Mayor's question, you're looking for the applicant to weigh in on his personal views on the potential constraints to a rezoning?
Yeah, I would, if he has off the, considering this 40 plus permitted uses, I guess he's not interested in developing it specifically for any of these permitted uses, but in terms of selling it. But I guess knowing what his intent is might help us shape, conditions on granting that bylaw amendment.
Okay. I mean, what I'm hearing from Ms. Martin, though, is a future property owner could certainly come back to this table and seek to expand the uses based upon, the municipality's planning parameters. So it's not evident to me that what the particular desires of this particular property owner are that relevant, because no doubt another property owner could come in after the sale of this property and have a whole other ambition for these lands that goes beyond the reflections of this current property owner, who has obviously conceded they have no interest in doing anything other than, to your point, selling the land at a increased value.
No, I understand that, but I guess the intent of my question is to address some of the concerns of the residents
Yes.
that abut the land. It wouldn't prevent someone having to come forward with another zoning bylaw amendment to increase that list. But if it's narrowed, it does force them, if they're going to do something that we haven't narrowed that permitted use to, they would definitely have to have bear the expense and the paperwork of submitting another zoning bylaw amendment. So,
Okay, so
in-
maybe we can ask the applicant that question, and then I'll go to Councillor Strachan. You also have a question? Would you prefer to ask your question prior to going to the applicant? Go
If I
ahead.
may, Madam Mayor, I'm
Yes.
just going to add into what the Deputy Mayor said. I think it's less about the intent for this current applicant and more so to say mitigate the concerns of residents by reducing the number of possible options for future development. You're absolutely right. As was mentioned, somebody can come later and ask for more, but they have to come back. So limit down to so that it doesn't wind up being a noisy, very, disruptive kind of industry, maybe reducing those ones. I know it's probably not going to satisfy many or all, but it could mitigate the impact should we choose to go forward with this application.
Okay, so we'll ask the applicant to comment, and then we'll go to Councillor Sullivan. Okay,
Yeah.
Mr. Bongard?
Yeah. Thank you. So my father isn't present, so I have to speak on his behalf here at the last minute. But I could say that, look, I grew up in that area. I can understand and appreciate. I read the letters of the concerns and the complaints. If there's a reasonable, picking and choosing, I mean, the danger is you pick one off the list of 40. And somebody says, well, what about this one, this one, this one? How far does it get whittled down? So if there's something that's reasonable, look, we're willing to have a discussion on that. And to my understanding, because it has an H designation, and maybe I'm not understanding this correctly, but it sounds to me like in general terms, that the planning board has the right of refusal. So whatever property goes, whatever business or whatever owner, it may not even be a business because it's still rural designation. Whoever purchased that property, if the planning board doesn't agree with the business that goes on there, do you guys not have the right of refusal for that potential owner?
So certainly, I'm going to hear from Ms. Martin, and then I'm going to go to Councillor Sullivan. There's some amount of speculation here, and I don't know how far we want to carry down that path. But I'll ask Ms. Martin to speak again to the current or future proposed use of lands, and then I'm going to recognize Councillor Sullivan before going to members of the public. Go ahead.
So I will address the question from Mr. Bongard, or the comment raised in regards to further planning approvals in regards to the holding provision. If passed, the zoning bylaw amendment would establish the right to have a commercial or industrial use under the list of permitted uses in the C6 zone. The requirement for site plan control is under the authority of the municipality. It is delegated at the staff level as per Bill 109 quite a few years ago. That's one of the many provincial changes. To that end, staff would not issue an approval for a development to proceed if it didn't meet technical requirements. So if a hydrogeological study came back and said it wasn't viable, like we wouldn't be able to support an application for a specific use, but there might be another use that is more tenable. The traffic impact study would look at impacts to the road, and there would be requirements, potential requirements for upgrading. The traffic study would identify what those could be. If there are any control measures required at the intersection, that's depending again on the use. Certain uses, say like, an abattoir would have a much different level of traffic than, say, maybe perhaps a retail store. So those are considerations that would be taken into things like traffic generation. Same thing with the unevaluated wetland. Recommendations would have to be followed. So if the study required a certain setback, that would provide that level of regulation as well. The approval rests with the municipality. We need to be satisfied that they can meet all of those technical studies to build, but they would have those as of right uses that they could pursue those studies under.
Okay, thank you so much. So I'll go to Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you to Director Martin. On the official plan designation, it appears that over half of the property is unevaluated wetland. Would that have any impact on what is potentially allowed to put on that property then, in terms of a business?
Thank you for the question through your worship to Councillor Sullivan. Not specifically, the evaluation of the unevaluated wetland wouldn't dictate use. It would look at what is proposed and would suggest, first it's evaluating its significance. So what significance does it hold? And what recommendations are there to protect that feature? So there could be recommendations in regards to during construction, ensuring that you have the proper silt fencing to prevent and any impacts to the wetland, setback recommendations. So can't be all development shall be located X meters, but again that would be evaluated. It would also help define the boundary, noting that our mapping uses provincial data as well as aerial imagery to try and define where those natural heritage features are. And unevaluated. So evaluating that wetland through an environmental impact assessment would help determine, where exactly that delineation is. And that would become part of the property site plan approval. And the recommendations from that study would inform the development of the property. But it wouldn't necessarily dictate to say, here's the wetland, you can't have X use there.
Okay, thank you. If I may, another question?
Yes.
So regardless of what goes forward there, it would all be subject to the existing noise and lighting bylaws that municipality has across the board everywhere, correct? And it's unserviced land, so it would have to have private service as well and septic for any servicing that's required. So that would limit any density that was on it. Is that correct?
Thank you for the question through your worship. So the holding provision as drafted in the draft zoning bylaw amendment identifies the requirement for a site servicing study, which would identify how the site is serviced. It would need to take into consideration hydrogeological for water, as well as a terrain analysis for a septic system. To that end, we do apply our dark skies policies in the official plan. The photometric plan is a listed requirement there. And then through further pre-consultation, depending on what the proposed use is, we may or may not ask for a noise study. Again, if someone's establishing a retail store, typically that's not something we'd ask, but that's where further pre-consultation with the municipality ahead of a site plan application could identify those requirements.
Okay, thank you. So any other questions for staff or the applicant before we start hearing from members of the public? Not seeing any? Okay. So then those of you wishing to speak, if you could come down, you have to address folks from the deputation table with your name and address. No, we don't ask for disclosures of address anymore, do we? Just name? Oh, right, but we don't ask for it to be disclosed on the live stream? Okay, okay. I thought there were privacy considerations now, but there are not. Okay, so are there others wishing to speak? It will just help us with time regulation. Okay, so there's at least 3. Are there more? 4 or 5? Okay. So with that in mind, we've just thrown up a clock just so that we can be fair to everyone who wishes to speak. So our clerk will be activating the clock. It counts down. And obviously at the end of those 10 minutes, to the best of your ability, if you could wrap up, we would appreciate it. My colleagues will still have an opportunity to ask you questions after the 10 minutes, but believe it or not, we have 3 public meetings for this portion of our council agenda this evening. This is one of 3, so we certainly don't want to limit in any way your opportunity to address us. It's very important, but we just need to keep an eye on the time. And we may or may not choose to bring this matter to a conclusion this evening, so your voices are certainly very welcome. So we'll start with our first speaker, and it is important because this is likely the only public meeting on this subject that should you wish to speak, you really need to seize the opportunity because there may not be another public meeting. So again, I would encourage you to not hesitate if you wish to speak. We just hope that we can, for the most part, adhere to the clock. So welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My name is Don Stevenson. I live at 1110 Kennedy Road, right around the corner from the 395 town line. I urge you to just say no. Our official plan has been looked at for the last 2 years. It was looked at 10 years ago. You created an enterprise zone. That's where the commercial and industrial goes. You have an industrial park. You have vacant highway commercial lots all up and down Highway 43. This is jumping across the road and setting a precedent that's dangerous. This is bad planning. Our official plan speaks about considering zoning amendments, and every time it does, it talks about the use. Well, there is no use. This is premature and should not come back until there is some sort of an idea of what a proposed use is. It already has permitted uses. They're called the rural zone. You can have a horse, you can have space, you can have a house. It already has permission. This, I was blown away when I saw this and saw that staff were supporting it. It basically is shifting responsibility away from council and putting it to staff. It's putting a blank check in the hand of a prospective purchaser, and then all the important studies that Director of Planner listed are going to come back to staff, not to the public, not to the council, not to the committee. It's delegated to staff. And by the time Home Depot buys the property, the community and the council will have no recourse. And the traffic studies will get done and the road will get expanded, but it's not the correct way to do planning. Our official plan says that it's not the correct way to do planning. The current OP designation is rural and mineral aggregate. The enterprise designation is on the other side. The portion that's designated rural may permit some of the uses listed on the C6 zone, but the spirit of the rural designation is different than the enterprise designation across the street. Section 4.3.a of our official plan states commercial uses shall generally be encouraged to locate within hamlet areas, but may be permitted in the rural designation. Rural commercials shall include, but not limited to, resort and recreation commercial use, tourist facilities, auction barns, farm-related commercial uses, flea markets, golf courses. I know it says not limited to, but that's the spirit of what the official plan says is permitted in a rural designation. Not a commercial enterprise zone where we're going to have warehouses, and certainly not brought forward with no proposed use. 4.3b discusses industrial uses, and it goes on to say the use must be appropriate for the proposed location and compatible with the surrounding uses. We don't know the use, so just say no. And when an applicant comes back and they have a use in mind, you can keep the zone rural and allow a certain use, or you can change it to a C6 entirely and restrict some of the potential uses. But to just say we're going to allow 41 potential uses with sub-uses and ancillary uses, it's a slippery slope. And I read the application and I basically hear, we don't want the property, we want to sell it, and we want to make as much money as possible. So we don't care what the community, we don't care about the compatibility with the community. We just want to make as much money as we can. That's not why we do planning. We've already done the planning. You guys just spent 2 years and no one said, hey, why don't we expand the enterprise designation and include 395 Town Line Road? Because that's a perfect place for it. You didn't do that. That's the gateway to the rural designation and rural zones that extend throughout the south and the east. It's just terrible planning, and all you need to do is simply say no, and the owner can sell his rural zoned property, and someone can buy it,
and they'll enjoy it the way it is, or they can come back when they have a proposed use in mind. I appreciate your time.
Okay, another protocol during municipal meetings is typically there isn't applause. We appreciate you want to show your enthusiasm. And I can't direct you one way or another. I'm just wanting you to understand the protocols that are typically in order for public meetings, but I defer to you in terms of how you receive those reflections. But I will ask council colleagues whether or not there are any questions of our first presenter. Any questions? Okay, so we'll welcome the next one, please. And again, thank you, of course, sir, for coming to the table. We do appreciate it. And again, name, certainly, and address, so I'm told. Oh, and you just want to turn on the mic, please. Thank you.
So, hello, my name is Christine Ratcliffe. I live at 394 Town Line Road, so right across from this property. So, Mayor and members of council, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Much appreciated. This is not fun or appreciated or wanted by any of us. As you can see, we're here in big numbers today and all upset about this. So this decision is not about a zoning amendment. It's about whether council has sufficient information to make a responsible land use decision in rural residential area. The application before you seeks to rezone the property to C6 rural commercial and industrial zone. Importantly, there's no concept plan, no defined end use, and no development proposal. Council is not being asked to approve a specific project, but instead to approve a broad range of permitted use that include higher impact industrial activities that will impact all of us. To most residents, this feels a bit like being asked to buy a house without seeing the inspection report, the floor plan, or knowing how many rooms in the house it has, and being told, don't worry, the details will come later. Most people would want to understand what they're committing to before making a decision, so please say no. Planning is intended to work the same way. Good planning begins with a clear proposal, an assessment of its impact, and a determination of whether it's compatible with surrounding land uses, and this is not. The distinction is critical in this case. Once the zoning is approved, the full range of C6 uses become permitted and really subject primarily to site plan control. At this point, the fundamental land use compatibility decision has already been made. The site functions as one of the last remaining buffers between existing residents and expanding commercial and industrial uses in this corridor. Once that buffer is removed, it can no longer be restored. While staff have recommended a holding provision, that tool addresses technical matters. It does not resolve the core planning question before council tonight, whether the full range of C6 industrial and commercial use is appropriate in principle beside existing rural residential properties that have been there for decades. It is difficult and premature for council to meaningfully assess conformity, particularly when the most intensive C6 uses have significant different impacts on neighboring lands. This application also raises cumulative impact concerns. Each individual rezoning that has been done in the past in this corridor may appear reasonable in isolation, but together they incrementally alter the character of the area. Residents experience that change not as a single decision, but as the steady erosion of rural residential character over time. I am asking council to prevent development. I'm not asking council to prevent development. I'm asking council to ensure that development is considered throughout a transparent and informed planning process supported by a clear land use proposal and a meaningful assessment of policy conformity and compatibility. For these reasons, I respectfully ask council to either refuse the amendment or defer it until a concept plan is provided and conformity with the municipal and United Counties official plan can be clearly demonstrated against a defined proposed use. This decision is about planning certainty, policy conformity, and protecting the long-term integrity of a rural residential community. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Colleagues, any comments or questions for, okay, I think we're good. Okay, thank you. Please come down.
Hi, I'm Jenna Cameron. I'm at 453 Town Line Road. My neighbors are the smart ones. They just told you the facts. I'm going to tell you why this is such a greedy idea. Both of my neighbors on either side still live with their adult children. I have seen a deer literally cross over our road in one leap that I didn't think that they could do. We have binoculars at every part of our back house because we have a backyard TV. We can see coyotes, coy wolves, deer, and those are the only ones that we can see. Imagine what we can't see. For you to want to up your value of your property and let the rest of us that are trying to let our kids play basketball in the street is wrong. And please, if there's any of you that still have some country in you, say no. Please. Thank you.
Okay, other comments or interventions at this stage?
Is this thing on? Yes, okay. Donna Adams, 3080 Dangerfield Road. I moved here from a busy area. I moved here because of the quiet and the peace and knowing all of my neighbors. When I moved here 28 years ago, we could walk downtown line, we could ride our bikes downtown line. Sorry, it's very emotional. I raised my son here. Sorry. I'm watching my neighbor raise her 2 young children here. And to make this kind of a change to an area that you're, as someone said, writing a blank check, we don't know what we're potentially getting there. We've already had the traffic increased tenfold with cars going up and down town line. Nobody obeys the speed limit. It's becoming unsafe as it is. And to allow this kind of a property with who knows what going in there, it could impact the whole neighborhood and not just the immediate neighborhood, right down to the end of Town Line Road. And again, as mentioned, it just seems to be a cash grab. I apologize. We've lost the screen. Okay. You know, I apologize to you, sir, and your sister and your father, but having grown up here, you should know what it's like to live in this area. I don't know how long it's been since you've lived in this area, but we want to keep the integrity of the properties as they are now. Unless there's some concrete plan in place that we know what's going to happen, I think it's very unfair to go forward. Thank you for your time.
Okay, others? Okay.
Thank you. My name is Greg Walsh, 394 Town Line Road. Madam Mayor and councillors and staff, I've lived in North Grenville for 55 years. And been on Town Line Road for 25. I'm not opposed to economic growth at all. I've long believed that North Grenville needs real career type employment, not just retail customer service jobs. The jail is a great example of how growth can be accomplished and provide good jobs for the area. However, economic development growth should be consistent with municipality and county official plans. The official plan was developed considering what is best for all North Grenville, including responsible economic growth. The rezoning proposal does not meet the requirements of the official plan for rezoning. This rezoning application is not based on economic growth, just the growth and development, and is demonstrated by the fact that there is no plan. This serves no purpose other than to artificially inflate the value of the land for resale. The co-applicant often refers to how he grew up in his land. For reference, and may be interested in knowing that he's now an American resident, so I suspect has very, very little interest in what happens here. What evidence have we seen that rezoning is required? Has the economic department been turning away potential industry because there's no land available? Within 1 kilometer of this property, there's over 100 acres of land appropriately zoned commercial industrial, available for development, and has been for decades. This amount of property far exceeds the needs of the municipality and would supply the municipality far into the future. The fact the property remains undeveloped for so many years is further proof that more industrial commercial land is not needed in this direct area. Also important is to consider the community. There are 6 landowners adjacent to this property. The landowner of 392 Town Line Road has been there for 54 years. We've been there for 394 for 25 years. 396 Town Line Road has been in the family for 64 years. 399 Town Line Road has been there for 43 years. 890 Van Buren has been there for over 40 years. I think this is a good example of community, along with more long-term neighbors down the road on Town Line. A small story demonstrates our dedication to this area. As many will remember, until recently, Town Line Road was a rural residential road and was gravel, all except for the first 700 feet, which was paved in the 90s. This paving was not done by the municipality, but was 100% funded by the landowners mentioned above. I'm not sure you can find more dedication to the community than that. I realize there's no bearing on this decision, but it's an important issue. Rezoning from rural to commercial industrial caused approximately 20 to 30% decrease in property value. Using the average of 20% on a $500,000 home, this means a $100,000 loss. In my own situation, my wife and I recently finished our mortgage, and she is retiring this year, and I hope to retire soon. We planned on retiring debt-free and enjoying rural life we worked and paid for. If this rezoning is approved tonight, it would cost us personally a loss of approximately $100,000 in equity in our home that we've worked hard to maintain. Excuse me. It seems the rural community is always paying the price for Kemptville's growth. Anyone who has driven the area around Kingdom Road can see what development looks like. Open bare fields stripped of trees, topsoil, and wildlife, and have been waiting for over 20 years now. This rezoning would contribute to more trucks, equipment, possibly all day or all night, causing disruption. For the 5 houses that already exist on Town Line Road across from this property, we also have the Toffmar Industrial Park behind us. This would basically make us a residential island in the middle of 2 industrial parks. I think this clearly demonstrates why this rezoning is not appropriate. I hope that you, Madam Mayor and councillors, will do your part to keep North Grenville a place for the residents and not just a place for land investors to make money on our backs by rejecting this rezoning proposal.
Thank you so much. Any other speakers wishing to come down? Certainly, if there's anyone wishing to speak after the forthcoming speaker, I'll ask that you come down before we close the public meeting. Please don't forfeit your opportunity to speak, as this may be one of your only chances to address council directly. Thank you. Mr. Carnegie, welcome.
Hello. I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous. I don't speak much. Hello, Madam Mayor and Council. My name is Sean Carnegie, for those of you who don't know me. I recently moved to Countville in the summer of '82. I'm here speaking on behalf of the landowner adjacent to the property located at 430 Town Line Road. I'm standing at the mic to make a formal oral submission at this recorded public meeting, and at this time, I've not been clearly instructed by my wife if I'm in support or opposed to the newly proposed bylaw amendment. But after hearing today the neighbors, I'm opposed. And I became opposed when I heard your comments, sir. You just want to raise it up to sell it. So I'm making an oral submission so I can be part of the appeal if it goes to land tribunal. If I'm mistakenly when I do that, I apologize. Now, a few things. On a side note, the Lees and Grenville Geo Hub currently planning applications maps lists this property as 391 to 395. Is it the whole complete property or just part of it? It's only, if it's only partial lands, or is the entire Ackley Farm property, the farm fields and bush? So it's saying it's 391 to 395 on the maps. Just so we're all clear on that.
Would you like Ms. Martin to answer now?
I'm just, so you guys are aware. That's
Okay.
what, okay?
Yes, thank you.
And Mr. Bongard, Gunther and your mother were great neighbors. They come over and visit quite often. Your mom and dad used to talk fondly about your sister riding her horse in those fields. And I just wrote this all up, just listening to the neighbors. They were great neighbors. If you want to make your neighbors happy and get rid of all this stuff that's going on, I think you should keep it agriculture, and I propose to buy it. Anyways, I think it should stay agriculture the way it is. There's 5 other properties around Pioneer Nursery, the Pot Place, ASL, the dance studios, all within a few hundred meters of this place that haven't been, they're just abandoned. Well, I think council needs to put pressure on the current stalled projects. And everyone at this table knows I'm a very avid candidate of expansion and growth in North Grenville. I'm on the committees. I really enjoy that stuff. And when there's no designation of what you're planning to do with it other than just sell it, I agree with what Dawn and everybody else said. If there's a new owner that buys it and they want to change it and they have a proposal, they come to Amy and the council, or sorry, Director Martin and the council, and give their exact purpose of what they want to do with it. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Ms. Martin, did you have any comment about how the land is characterized in terms of parcels?
Thank you, Your Worship. So Mr. Carnegie is correct. There is a civic address of 391 to 395. In the presentation earlier, it showed a map of the property. It is the entire property. I'm not really certain why it was at some point in time given a range of civic addresses. We have a few of those misnomers where they do, but I think the applicant kind of fondly knows this property as 395 Town Line Road. But to that end, it doesn't have any bearing on as to it's the entirety of the parcel that is owned. It's not 2 separate parcels. It is one 15-acre piece of parcel.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Colleagues, oh, we have one more. Absolutely. Thank you.
My name is Jane Goodhue. I'm the direct neighbor to the property in question. I live at 399 Town Line Road. And I just would like to say that I'm opposed to rezoning it. Selling it is fine, but rezoning it, no. Thank you.
Okay. Indeed, no problem. We'll continue to hear from folks in the room until we've gone through all those wishing to address council.
Do I have a rebuttal opportunity?
Mr. Bongard, at the end of hearing from residents, we can then go back to you, sir, but we'll complete the public hearing with concerned residents first. Thank you. All right, go ahead.
Is it on?
It is on. And I think Mr. Bongard might need to mute his phone. We're hearing some background noise. I'm sorry. Okay, gotcha. Okay, go ahead.
My name is Luana Judge. Thank you. Okay, my name is Luana Judge. I live at 489 Town Line. I have seen many, many changes to our small little gravel road. I originally just said I would come to support our neighbors who are so going to be impacted on this should it go through. It seems like just greed, like other people have said, and I don't want to reiterate and take up your time, but there is enough land that has been zoned commercial, that it's more than enough available. And actually, I just want to preserve my right to speak should it go to the next level and be appealed. So that's why I came down.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Oh, I'm so sorry.
If this goes forward, we have the right to come back. I don't want each one of us to have to go up there and say that.
I think the letters that have been submitted are part of the public record, but I'll go to Ms. Martin.
Thank you. I'll just speak to process. So public comments that were submitted are part of the record. Oral submissions that are made are part of the record. You can make submissions up until the time that council makes a decision. So if no decision is made this evening, you can continue to send us your comments and your notes as part of that record. And if I think is the sign-in sheet was out front when you came in, so most of you would have recorded your information. But what I would encourage you to do, if you haven't corresponded with our planning department to date, we do just email planning at, it would have been on the notices, northgranville.on.ca. It's also available on our website. And please just send it to our staff to notify. I would like to be notified of the decision. If no decision is made this evening, when it comes back, we're pretty proactive just to let you know when the matter is coming back before council, so that you're not having to search all the agendas on the council page. So to that end, if you want to register your opposition, please send us an email to that email address, and it comes part of that public record in our file.
Okay. Are there any other speakers? The question is, what if the recommendation is approved by council this evening?
So then, through your worship, so in that instance, if it is approved this evening, then you do need to speak tonight. If you haven't already emailed in your comments or made written submissions, typically done by email, or you can come and state your opposition. I did read out a list of those who provided comments, although I do apologize, I don't know many of you in the room by name. But if you wanted to come down and even just state your name, your address, and your position without providing additional comments, you'd be welcome to do so as well.
I was just trying to make it short for everybody and not have us all come up here to make it go. We're all in the same predicament, all in the same feeling. Is it not, like, do I have, by sitting now, I've got my right to come back. But do you want everyone to have to do this? Or could we not take the list that everybody signed and put that in, is what I'm asking, to try and make it easier, to not make this go on all night.
I think Ms. Martin has clarified there's a list of names of people who've already sent emails.
But
Go ahead, Ms. Martin.
like someone like myself that hadn't sent, but I
Understood.
signed in tonight, and there's others here
Gotcha. Okay.
that have signed in, be put on that list without having to come up and speak.
Through your worship. So the list would just identify that you attended the meeting. It doesn't officially state your position on the matter. So by doing so at the mic, you are submitting that oral comment. I mean, it's really up to you, your worship. If there, I don't know how many more people haven't submitted comment. If we wanted to take a few minute break and we could just record that, just maybe to save maybe some individuals who don't want to come down, they can just quickly come and see me. I can register your name and your position on it. As part of the
let's do
public
that.
record. A little unconventional. I don't think we've ever done that, but certainly if it helps maybe the public in just making sure that their names are taken down, I can certainly create a sheet for that.
Okay. Deputy
Yeah,
Mayor?
since you're at the mic, could you state your name, address, and whether you're opposed or for it?
Opposed.
And your name and address, please?
Address, sir?
Stephen Volke, 1211 Kennedy Road. And my son wasn't able to come, but he's directly on Van Buren, 980 Van Buren is Mark Volke,
Vokey?
V-O-K-E-Y.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. So we will take a break. Thank you. And you can approach Ms. Martin if you would like to be part of the public record. Thank you. Okay, colleagues, we're back after a short break. We do want to ensure that we've heard from everyone in the room. I think those who didn't want to speak have let themselves be known to our Director of Planning, so thank you for that. But I will make one last call for comments from the public before going to Mr. Bungard. Not seeing any hands, so I'll take that to mean that all those who wished to speak this evening have done so, and we'll now invite Mr. Bungard to provide some comments, and then before closing the public meeting, certainly council colleagues can ask any questions of the applicant, and we'll then proceed to the next stage. Okay, Mr. Bungard.
Thank you. I just want to address a couple things, throw out a couple of ideas as well. I know this is a very emotional topic, very emotional subject. I want to start off just addressing the one comment I heard about, me being an American citizen. I am a Canadian citizen. I come home frequently. My family still lives in Kentville. My father's lived in Kentville since 1973. Where my life has taken me, which course, which path, which I didn't plan on in my life, but that's how life goes. I should not be penalized, and especially my father should not be penalized for that. So again, we're talking about my father's property, not me. I'm trying to help my father. I'm trying to do the best I can. And I am remote, so I appreciate being able to attend. Give you a little bit of a background. Some people, like I mentioned, I'm originally from that area. My family, they purchased a property back in 1973 where the current Kentville Brewery is, where the current marina is. That property used to belong to my parents. That's where I grew up. As a little boy, I couldn't leave the property. I had to make myself busy all summer. And I said one day to my dad, I said, Dad, why aren't there more, houses around? Why aren't there neighbors, someone I can play with? And he made me aware very early, and he was fully aware himself when he bought the property, that property, he said, not only can people live there, but businesses, commercial, buildings can live here. And he said that the area around here, and you look across the street, that was already developed. That was already an industrial area, and that's on the south side of Van Buren. That's where Toffmar Road is. Used to be Park Hole. I think it's Napa now. Right next it's a bus depot of some sort. Used to be Christie Transport. You'd have the 18-wheelers rolling in all the time. So the whole fleet of them. But we got along with them. I cut the grass for Park Hole. I knew Mr. Christie very well. Behind there, along Toffmar Road, there's a few businesses. They've been there since at least we were there in 73. Definitely earlier. There was Charlie Price in the corner behind Mr. Crawford, who used to live on Town Line Road. So you'd have Charlie Price's big dump trucks. You'd have the excavators rolling up and down that road. And we'd see that right at our front door. And that was just a part of our life. So my father knew that going in. And Van Buren, it ended right at Town Line Road. It's not the way it is today. It stopped right at Town Line Road. Town Line Road and the Van Buren intersection back then was actually called Molson's Corner. And these 4 or 5 residential dwellings right at that corner, basically in front of my father's property, they back right up against an industrial park. Like I said, you had the 18-wheelers right out your back door, and you had the dump trucks and excavators in your backyard. And, quirk fact, but the residence that's closest to Van Buren and Town Line, I think it's maybe Center Block, Low Ranch house, that actually used to be a business. So that used to be the convenience store at Molson's Corner. And I remember going there as a child myself. So yes, I can appreciate and I understand what you folks are saying, and I know you're probably not going to believe me. But I saw some very nice pictures here from the township that have a nice high level map, and they show, you know, what the property zoning is and everything like that. And I can see a lot of the properties north of Van Buren and south of Van Buren and along the bend and up to 43 and across 43 on the right and the left of Van Buren. They're all zoned either commercial, industrial, or rural commercial industrial mixed use. Unfortunately, for better or worse, we're one of the last properties left. My father's had this property for many, many years. He's getting older now. He has a right to sell the property. And while he's still alive, it's easier for us to go through this process and for me to still help him. So the only thing I have to look at is Google Maps. And when I look at a higher level for the greater good of the Kemptville area and the surrounding North Grenville, a couple of things I pick up. One is I see that Van Buren is one of, if not the only major road leaving Kemptville that's close to both the two major highways, 43 and 416. And when I see all the zoning that's already, as I mentioned, commercial mixed use zoning, I look across 416. Again, this is a high level. I'm trying to see what the overall plan is. And kind of the mirror on the other side of 416 is where you have, is it the Rush, you know, truck sales office. You have another building there. You have Walmart. You have, that all used to be field as well. So there seems to be a concerted effort by the township or by North Grenville now to consolidate all commercial zone properties in that cloverleaf, in that intersection of 43 and 416. So what I see on the Van Buren, I see the properties along Van Buren, not second or third or fifth or 10th row away from Van Buren, but the properties along Van Buren already set a precedent well before 1973 when we were there, and we knew going in that we were in a commercial zone area. So I just want to throw out those things, and if those areas, and including my father's property, which is right up against Van Buren, if you don't, if those aren't kind of planned to be commercial, then I'm not sure where you would put the commercial. Would we put the commercial down Kennedy Road, down Dangerfield Road, down Beach Road? Would we go to the north side of 43? Would we go down French Settlement Road? Do we do it farther away from the main arteries? I think the traffic would be even worse. You're going to impact many, 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 many more residential areas than this very, at least forgive me, but it's of my opinion, very condensed, consolidated, localized area, which to me makes sense because they are tucked very close to the major arteries, to Route 43 and 416. Now, unfortunately, there's a handful of residential properties that aren't necessarily the best suited. But again, just like us, knowing we were getting into commercial zoning when we first bought there in 73, I have to believe that the majority of these people that live in these homes now knew that they're buying property that's abutted. When you look out, you know, your front window, you see us. You look out your back window, you see commercial. So, you know, there was definitely indications that that area was commercial to begin with. So in some regards, you know, if I look at it for the greater good of the township, of the district, I can get, and maybe this isn't the North Grenville planning, but I assume that based on the evidence, the commercial industrial properties are being consolidated around 416 and 43. Kemptville's not growing internally. The growth in Kemptville that I've seen over the years is all along the perimeter, and specifically along the 43 corridor. And again, a lot of the commercial that has come up are the Walmarts and the Canadian Tire, and they're right near the hubs for the transportation, main transportation where they get their supplies. So I'll just leave on that, but I do want to throw something else out that I'm not sure people have thought of. And honestly, this maybe isn't the forum, but the Town Line Road, that's the only entrance right now. But in reality, my father's property is right up against Van Buren. We see that the entrance and exit could be just like Sola City across the street. That's your main entrance. You don't even get on Town Line. You could even close that off or make it an emergency route. So that would prevent Town Line traffic in essence. That's another option. So maybe that's another permitting zoning question. But I hear a lot about the Town Line, but for us, the length of the property is along Van Buren, and that could be on and on ramps, and nobody even gets on Town Line. Just something to consider. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for those additional comments. And I think with that, colleagues, will be closing the public meeting and moving on to deliberating the proposed recommendations from staff this evening. So at this stage, I'll see colleagues, council colleagues, if you have additional questions for Ms. Martin in regards to the application. No additional questions? So then the recommendation as presented by staff is that council enact the bylaw to rezone subject lands from rural to rural industrial and rural commercial holding CXH. So obviously, colleagues, it's at your discretion to move to approve the staff recommendation, reject the staff recommendation, or defer. I will need someone to initiate action in some direction at some point if we are to bring this matter to some sort of resolution. If it doesn't have to be the final resolution this evening, but to at least provide direction to staff one way or another. So I'll recognize Councillor Strahan.
Madam Mayor, I'd be happy to move only to open up for discussion so that we're able to deliberate this matter.
And you're moving to approve or reject?
I would like to discuss it further, I suppose. So if
Okay.
we don't want to move it yet and allow for discussion now, then that would work as well.
That's fine. And if you have additional questions for staff, you can do so, but absolutely feel free to intervene without making a formal motion until such time as we deem that we're ready to initiate some sort of action. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So thank you very much to all the residents who have commented. I also live rurally and I'm well acquainted with traffic and traffic increases. Talk to me about when public servants went back into the office and what traffic looked like in our backyard, basically. So I do appreciate those comments and the impact that it can have on your own life and when you're in those busier areas on main access points. I think that the points made by the applicant regarding the access to main roads, it is geographically suitable from that perspective alone, proximity to other commercial uses. It is not in the current official plan maps. We do know that there are many exceptions that are made to official plans, even once they're approved, for better, for worse. But that is usually how discussions go through over the years because official plans are only reviewed every 5 years. The timing of this one, I understand, makes it a little bit more challenging. I will say the characterization, and to you, Mr. Bongard, about being greedy. I don't know very many people who, when they sell their properties, go for the lowest bid on their homes, that don't try and find improvements and so on. So I don't think that he necessarily needs to be characterized as greedy, opportunistic probably, and you know, settling up a great retirement plan or anything like that, maximizing what he can get for profit on his property. I think many landowners, property owners are guilty of that to a certain extent. So I don't personally see this as being greedy. I do have concerns with not having any purpose for this land. It's a long list, and I'm looking at it right now, and I can name certainly a few of them that I think would be less desirable to have right next to a residence. And so I think that makes this conversation a little bit harder in my mind as I'm going through and weighing all the options as to what we could do with this, because the long list is a long list. And like I said, big difference between an abattoir and a outdoor patio. There's a wide range there. There's traffic, and depending on the type of commercial activity, if you have 18-wheelers trying to take a very sharp turn, I live not too far from Dalmeny and Rideau River Road, and I can't count the number of vehicles, especially large trucks, that have wound up in the ditch because it's a very tight turn to get onto Dalmeny. So I think that the traffic considerations are more than just traffic count. It's the type of traffic as well. So I wanted to state these as my concerns, and where I'm seeing what has been said by residents as valid concerns, and that they all need to be weighed into the decisions that's before us. So thank you very much for coming up here and for the presentations.
Thank you, Councillor Strachan. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I initially approached this application thinking, and I think I mentioned it early on as the first question, about whether Mr. Bongard would consider, in other words, we would refer it back to staff to work with Mr. Bongard to reduce that list of 40 to, let's say a handful of uses that would be attached to the zoning bylaw amendment. But then I thought, well, that doesn't really prohibit someone to purchase the land and come back to open it up to some of those uses, as Councillor Strachan suggested. There's a great difference between an abattoir and a specialty food shop in terms of its compatibility with rural residents. So I'm not going to do that. I think I'm leaning towards refusing the application and let the purchaser, and I agree with Councillor Strachan's statement that, we're all looking, property owners are all looking to increase the value of their property. And that certainly, I understand, although he hasn't said it, that Mr. Bongard's motivation is to increase the value of his father's property so that it can provide, more value in terms of whatever stage of life he's at. But, I've personally been involved with, providing for aging parents and being very concerned about their safety and security and their quality of life. But I'm leaning towards myself personally to rejecting the application and let someone, if they want to change the zoning bylaw, come with a very specific use that we can dig our teeth into. So rather than a blank check, and rather than asking Mr. Bongard to limit, the full list of uses, I'm leaning towards rejecting the application. Thanks.
Any other comments by council colleagues at this stage? Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with both Councillor Strachan and Deputy Mayor Barclay. I've been struggling with this and waffling, I must admit. We absolutely need to diversify our tax base in North Grenville to more commercial and industrial. And it seems like this area and this particular piece of property is in an appropriate location for that to happen. So I thank everyone for bringing their comments and their personal feelings and sharing with us. And I also thank Mr. Bongard for his perspective and appreciate the stage he's at, having to take care of things for his dad as much as he can. I'm I would either want to see a restriction on what goes in, what goes forward, and in terms of land use, or, and again, we can't really know what would be acceptable to the neighbors, and we can't really know what would be acceptable to a potential purchaser of the land. So I like the idea of perhaps having the access off of Van Buren rather than off of Town Line. I think that's a potentially a good idea. I don't know if that's possible to change the physical address of the land, but anyway, I at this point would be more agreeable to reject it rather than just have carte blanche. Who knows what goes forward there. And I agree too that everybody wants to get as much money as possible for their properties, whether it's residential or a zone rural or changing zoning, whatever. I don't think that classifies the property owner as being greedy.
So colleagues, I've heard from all of you, so I'm looking for someone to move a motion in one direction or another so we can get something on the table, engage in any further debate, and call the question. So Deputy Mayor.
I would move to reject the application.
Okay, so we would not approve the recommendation, so we would be rejecting the proposed enactment of bylaw 7326 to rezone the subject lands. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Strachan? Okay. Is there any further debate at this stage, council colleagues? Not seeing any. Ms. Martin, is there anything we need to be aware of at this stage?
From a procedural perspective, council is at the point where you're going to make a decision, and then we just follow our process under the Planning Act afterwards.
Okay. So in terms of the terminology of rejecting the proposed rezoning, is that the correct way to structure this motion?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. So then I am going to call the question. All in favor of the motion? Okay, that carries. So Ms. Martin will follow up with the applicant, and we thank members who are here this evening for their contributions. And we're going to move on to our next public meeting, so thank you.
You're welcome to stay.
More riveting council business to come.
Thank you for your time and allowing me to speak today. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Bongard. And I would like to thank, of course, Ms. Martin, who's I'm sure has done considerable work on this file. So thank you, Ms. Martin. I just want to ask a question with the forthcoming public meetings. Is it possible for us to do the tourism meeting and potentially defer the affordable housing CIP?
Thank you, Worship. We have advertised it in the paper for this evening. We would have to re-advertise if we hold the affordable housing CIP on another night.
Indeed. So, but that is a possibility. Obviously, there's no one here except for, I think, our staff, our consultants. Of course, Mr. Carnegie may remain, but or not. So we may be down to no public for either of the public meetings. We accept that we have folks who have come to present on the tourism CIP, and we're very eager to hear from them. I'm a little bit concerned just about our bandwidth and capacity to navigate the affordable housing CIP in addition to the tourism CIP. So I think we may have to determine whether or not we have the bandwidth as a council to really, and of course, we're keeping you here quite late as well. So I would like council to give some consideration to deferral of the affordable housing CIP, depending on how long it takes us to get through the tourism CIP. So we'll start with, of course, I think you're going to introduce the conversation on the tourism CIP.
Perfect. Thank you, Your Worship. While Nancy, our consultant from Vitality Planning, comes down to the delegation table to get herself ready for the presentation, I do want to introduce to council that we are holding this meeting under the Planning Act to consider a community improvement plan for tourism. We did retain Vitality Planning, including Nancy Reed Oldridge here tonight, as well as her colleague Natasha, who unfortunately is out of the country and couldn't be here this evening to undertake the development of this community improvement plan. It has been quite a fulsome journey, and Nancy will take you through that. I don't want to steal her thunder, but absolutely, by all means, if there's any questions, please direct them towards Nancy, and I will let Nancy decide whether she wants to take questions throughout or at the end, whatever best maybe perhaps suits her. But really looking forward to the great work that has been completed to date.
Great. Welcome. Thank you for your patience. We're glad that you're here. Thanks.
Got it. There I have it. Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I lost the audience, but I'm still very excited to share the work that we've done for the tourism community improvement project. As Amy mentioned, it has been myself, president of Vitality Planning, as well as my partner, my business partner, Natasha, who isn't here. But we've had a very enjoyable time, not only visiting, but working with staff and enjoying your community. Next slide. Thank you. I know, well, the plan was to talk about the housing community improvement plan next. I know you also have an existing community improvement plan, so community improvement plans aren't new to the municipality. They're also not new to me. I've worked from Red Lake, Ontario to Vaughan to Haldimand County to Essex, so all across Ontario for the past 20 years, specifically on these projects because they excite me. Usually we do have an audience because these are exciting projects and because we're giving away money to help achieve goals and objectives across the municipality. So that has been our goal. We launched in 2025. We completed a background report. So we spent a lot of time looking at the official plan, your cycling strategy, the tourism strategy, your economic development strategy, downtown CIP, your waterfront access strategy. So much work has been done. And we think that what we've pulled together in terms of a toolkit of incentives really reflects all of that really great work. So what is the CIP? We all know this, but it's a mystery to a lot of community members. It's not a zoning bylaw, it's not an official plan, there's no policies. Well, there are policies, but this isn't like a what can you or can't you do on your property. This is if you're meeting the objectives and the goals and the vision of the CIP, then the municipality is able to provide money to landowners to help meet those goals and objectives. It's the only tool in the planning toolkit that enables the municipality to do that. There's a process, though. You have to identify a community improvement project area. You prepare the CIP. And we did a lot of research to come up with our recommendations. So we looked at Adelaide and Metcalfe, Leeds and Thousand Islands, Carleton Place, Lake of Bays, Prescott, Haldimand County. And I would say I'm excited to present this today because it's a really unique toolkit that we've come up with. It's been an exciting project. Like I said, I've worked across Ontario on CIPs. I've done probably 40, but this is one that really kind of got me excited. So the incentives that I'll share with you tonight, some of them are really unique and cool, and I'd be proud of. Well, I am proud of. Next slide, please. Also part of the process is engagement. So we did an online survey. We've had a public open house. We've had stakeholder workshops, one stakeholder workshop, but also workshops with the BIA and the chamber. We had a meeting with your Economic Development Advisory Committee and multiple ongoing project team sessions to talk about that. So we've definitely met our requirements in terms of engagement. background review, and meeting the community improvement plan requirements under the Planning Act. Next slide, please. Like I said, a community improvement plan must first identify a community improvement project area. We are identifying the entire municipality as the community improvement project area, but there are certain requirements. First of all, you must be meeting this vision statement that we have come up with, which stems directly from your tourism strategy. Next slide. The CIP also sets out a set of goals and objectives. So in order to be eligible for the incentive programs that we've put together, you must be first contributing to the vision statement and also be contributing in some way to the goals. And in the CIP, there are a set of objectives to support each goal. So there is a fairly rigid standard or framework that applicants must meet in order to be eligible. Next slide, please. So this is, like I said, a cool, unique, exciting community improvement plan, in my opinion. There are some pretty standard incentive programs, and there are pretty unique incentive programs. There are 12 altogether. I'll go through them fairly quickly. I will just state first that there is a very clear set of general eligibility criteria in the CIP. So it's rigid. We're not handing out money here. We're meeting objectives, we're meeting goals, and we're meeting eligibility criteria. The other thing I'd like to say is that, yes, this is a toolbox. There's 12 programs, but just because they're in the CIP doesn't mean you have to make them available every year for the next 10 years or throughout the implementation period. It's up to council to decide what is available depending on resources and funding. We have an outdoor art grant program, which would provide up to $3,000 for public art and placemaking projects. We have a sustainability top-up grant. So if you are approved for another program, you could also be approved for this top-up grant if you provide sustainability, energy efficiency enhancements, and that could increase your grant up to $5,000. We have an application and building permit fee rebate, so to offset application fees for up to $5,000. Next slide, please. We have a tourism design and feasibility grant to help with professional studies and design work and to determine whether a project may or may not be feasible, up to $5,000. An accessibility improvement grant to do what is beyond building code requirements, up to $10,000. Tourism property improvement grant, so dealing with facade, landscaping, and other property improvements, up to $10,000. Next slide, please. An active tourism grant, so Natasha, who is not here, is an active cycler and was very passionate about this program. One of the more exciting ones, I think, that's included in this, up to $15,000. An event infrastructure grant for permanent structures to help support exciting events that happen in North Grenville, $15,000. Heritage Conservation and Restoration Grant. I have been in North Grenville since yesterday, and we toured around a lot, and something that really struck me is the beauty of your heritage buildings. And so an incentive up to $20,000 for conservation or reuse. Next slide, please. Another heritage program, but this one is through the province. You must have this in a community improvement plan in order to be eligible. It's a matching program with the province for tax relief if your property taxes increase as a result of major investment. An agritourism and rural diversification grant, another very exciting program for to support farm-based tourism and on-farm diversified uses, up to $25,000. And a tourism accommodation incentive program, small scale for small overnight accommodations, up to $25,000, or perhaps a larger scale investment or redevelopment or development, which is a tax increment equivalent grant up to 5 years, which pays back the increase of your property taxes during that 5-year period. I have a couple quick scenarios that I'll go through. So say, for example, a bed and breakfast owner invests in landscaping on the property prior to the project. Prior to beginning the project, they are approved for $10,000. As part of the project, they purchase rain barrels and install permeable pavers for drainage. And because of that extra that they added, they're eligible for the Sustainability Top-Up Grant. So they can combine those two programs. And as a result of the project, they are eligible and receive $15,000. If they did not do that, Sustainability Top-Up, the maximum they would get was $10,000. Next slide. This is the tourism incentive grant, and this is a major incentive program. So a 4-story hotel in Kemptville with 70 units on a vacant land. Forgive me if this, if you can't imagine it, we're being creative here. But after the incentive program, property taxes increased by $8,000. Again, don't criticize us on the numbers. This is totally hypothetical. But just so you understand how the math works on a tax increment, in the first year, they receive 100% of that tax increment, which is $8,000 back. In year 2, they receive $6,400 back. In year 3, $4,800, and so on. So it decreases, and it's meant to take the hit off of that tax increment, that tax increase. The applicant was also interested in landscaping for this hypothetical situation, landscaping grants, but they're not eligible because the TIG is the one program that you can't stack. Other incentive programs you can stack, and that's how the CIP is written. Thank you very much. The last thing I would just like to say is that it has been an absolute pleasure to work with Amy, Matt, and Marta. Best clients ever. We've really enjoyed working with them and also visiting your community. Again, it's been a pleasure, and thank you for your time. Happy to answer any questions.
Yes, of course. Thank you. So despite the late hour, I do think, to your point, there's a genuine interest on the part of not just council, but the community as a whole. So I expect there will be a number of questions. So we'll start with Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'm sorry it's late. I've dropped your name, but
Nancy.
Nancy. Oh, wow, that's easy to remember.
Easy to remember.
One would argue.
Yeah.
It's okay.
God forbid I forget the mayor's name. Thank you for waiting so long to present, and I really like to do it justice, but for my own mental health, I've boiled it down to 2 questions or 2 comments. The first one is regarding the tax increment equivalent grant. I'm familiar with something similar with the BIA, the downtown. Sorry, it's not the BIA, but the downtown CIP. But that, as I believe, goes over 10 years. Is there a reason to shorten that period to 5? Or maybe that's a question for Director Martin.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll just take a stab, but
Sure.
Given the range of programs that we have in this CIP and the expansive community improvement project area, trying to spread the budget and any incentive, the municipality can create an incentive program in any way they choose. So that just seemed natural in terms of spreading the budget and across a large geographic area. And I'll ask Amy to add on to that.
Through your worship to the deputy mayor, just add on to what Nancy has provided is that there is a large suite of programs. Certainly if council feels that 5 years is too short a time, we could build in a 10-year program where the incremental amounts would happen much more gradually over that time. There would be a larger incentive given back. It is our intention when we do bring this back for council's adoption that we would identify what a funding envelope would be. So we'd go back and do that analysis to look at a 5-year versus a 10-year TIG as to what that impact could be over time.
I would appreciate that when it comes back. The second, if I might, Madam Mayor, and then I'm done. The Arts, Culture and Heritage Advisory Committee have a policy about public art. Are you familiar with it? And do you see this as the outdoor art grant as being something that can be stacked with the funds that we have dedicated to contribute towards public art?
Through you, Madam Mayor, absolutely. We've reviewed that policy. We think this is supports that policy, could be stacked with any other programs that support public art, as well as being stacked with any other incentive programs. So it's meant to enhance everything else that's happening within the municipality in terms of public art.
I would only suggest that if we already have a policy to support public art, that if it's a question of picking and choosing or reducing the list for budgetary conditions, that would be the only one. I'm excited by all the programs that you've listed here. They all make sense to me, but that might be one if there's budgetary constraints to drop from the basket.
Okay, Councillor O'Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Nancy, for your presentation. We all have our little pet projects, and as Deputy Mayor his pet project is arts and drainage, and my pet project is active transportation and cycling. So I'm pleased to see all the references to cycling and cycling tourism in this presentation. And on page 6, it speaks to objectives to support investment in cycling infrastructure, which is actually something that the Health, Wellness, Fitness, Active Transportation Advisory Committee is being working on right now in our work plan. And so we have a presentation we're actually going to give to CDAC, the Economic Development, at their meeting in July. So I'm wondering, how long are these grants available? When are they available and for how long? Because I think it's $15,000 for cycling tourism. Is that per project or just 15,000 total?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the answer to that is the $15,000 identified in the criteria would be per project.
Okay.
In terms of the broader question about how long incentives are available, usually a CIP lives for about 10 years before they're reviewed. So my approach to CIPs is always stack your toolkit, put as much in there as possible so that you don't have to come back and revise your CIP, which requires a public process and another meeting like this and everyone's time. So I like to prepare CIPs that have a lot of tools in them. This one does, 12 tools. And again, I'll just re-emphasize that just because they're in your toolkit doesn't mean they have to be available. So if perhaps it's not it's not a priority of council for a certain term, perhaps they're not available, or perhaps resources aren't available, or perhaps they are, and cycling is supported by other strategies that are adopted by council. So by having a toolkit and by enabling this toolkit for 10 years, council has the opportunity to decide what is in play or in effect or available and what is not.
Okay, thank you. Because we have sort of next steps identified in sort of many different projects, but we were advised last night that we really need to wait for the mobility plan to come in before we do anything more concrete, which is unfortunate because $10,000 or $15,000 doesn't go that far, but it could certainly take care of some small things that would make really big differences to cyclists locally, like even more bicycle racks and signage, share the road signs, and kinds of things like that. So mapping, that would be good. Anyway.
Through you, I think you'll see that in the CIP as eligible costs.
Okay, but we may have to wait quite a while before we can even do some of those small projects if we have to wait for the mobility master plan.
And I think the hope is that the mobility master plan is adopted in this calendar year. I know it's coming back certainly to council for some consideration, even if it's not the final document. So my expectation is there wouldn't be that much lag time necessarily between the tourism CIP and the capacity to activate, if you will, certain things under the mobility master plan. So that's how I understand the situation currently. Okay. I'm just looking at our CEO. Okay, well, thank you. I will acknowledge Councillor Strachan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, Madam Mayor, to Nancy. So thank you for the thorough list. I like the idea of having all those in there. Just to clarify, these would all be municipally funded, or are there ones that we would be accessing grants from another pot, say the province?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the only one program that would be a matching program with the province is the Heritage Property Tax.
Okay.
The others would be funded through a pot that I see municipalities normally identify an annual budget. And how that pot is divided, it could be first come, first serve, or multiple application deadlines where they're evaluated based on merit. But those programs would come from that municipal budget. The only other program that doesn't necessarily come from a pot is the tax increment equivalent grant, which requires the applicant to pay their taxes first, and then it's granted back. And I don't generally see that coming out of a municipal budget. It's rather just addressed through line items.
Loss of revenue
Exactly.
for the municipality. Yeah. Okay. So I'm just, just looking at the quick summary of this, it would be somewhere around 150 to 200,000 for all of these together. That's give or take. That's if there's one project per item. Our municipality is not that big, so we would probably have to make some choices. Our tax base probably wouldn't allow us to do 10 projects for each of these in any given year. So I think you've already answered that regarding, having a rotation of some sort, or, selecting maybe only a few in order to make it in line with the funding available. To the deputy mayor's point, I mean, we have other... because of our advisory committees, we do have funds that are available through those that meet other, perhaps other requirements, but I think there's some overlap here. And while stacking sounds like a great idea, it means just more money that's coming out of the municipal tax base. So I think that that's probably part of that challenge as well. Rural CIP, although it is not done, is something that's being looked at. It doesn't necessarily align directly with this, but it is something that there is some overlap with the way it's defined in the document here. So probably a comment more so for council and staff that we would have to make some choices about those ones as well, likely in order to make it reasonably affordable for taxpayers in North Grenville. I just wanted to say I appreciate this document. I think it's great to have all sorts of ideas in one place, and the concept of having everything listed out so that you don't have to revisit it often to come up with another idea to include in it is a great idea. So thank you very much for the detail and for the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just to add, I commend the breadth and depth of the options. So like my council colleagues, I think a lot of these things will resonate with the community and with certainly tourism operators or aspiring tourism operators, even if that's just one component of what they're doing on behalf of the community. Certainly, we might have been one of the only communities during the pandemic to commission a tourism strategy, and we were immensely proud of that strategy. And I think some of the early efforts to elevate North Grenville's profile as a result of the strategy, and I think our commitment as a whole to ensure that fewer people were using County Road 43 to drive through Kemptville to get to the hot destination of Merrickville, I think has proven to have paid off. But I think we still have a lot of work to do, which is why this tourism CIP is so critical. I know in the long quest for a hotel in North Grenville, which is now finally underway, it was as a result of comments from another mayor colleague who raised or brought to my attention that they did use a tourism CIP to incentivize that same hotel builder to both break ground and complete and open a hotel in the town of Prescott, which, certainly preceded the activity that we now see underway here. So one of my first questions is just, again, I don't think it affects the adoption of this tourism CIP by any stretch, but is an existing hotel operator eligible for this tourism CIP, or do you have to have not already started the work?
Through you, an existing, in fact, our stakeholder group included existing hotel operator, and they were interested in landscaping. And so certainly they would be eligible for any kind of expansion, facade improvement, landscaping. So yes, certainly they would be eligible for any improvement to their existing property.
And the tax equivalency program of which you spoke?
If there was an improvement that resulted in an increase to their property taxes through an addition or expansion, yes, they would be eligible.
Whereas in Prescott, my understanding was that this particular operator was able to avail of a tourism CIP, and I don't know all the details. You're suggesting that subsequent to this particular hotel operating or opening, they could pursue opportunities for improvements to an existing asset. Is that how it works?
Absolutely. Through you, that is the intent of the CIP, as long as there's some kind of improvement beyond like regular maintenance, and there's growth and it results in property taxes or new units in particular, then yes, they would be eligible as the CIP is currently written.
Okay. And again, I'm only asking because it was, I think, one of the other catalysts for the tourism CIP was the request by, I think, a previous developer of those lands to see what was possible here, given that many communities are using tourism CIPs as a bit of a carrot, if you will, to bring people in. So the CIP has lots of merit in certainly above and beyond a hotel. And I think the landscape in North Grenville is so rich in terms of so many different property owners and businesses wanting to leverage their tourism potential in some way, shape, or form. I think it is definitely wonderful to see the suite of options. I did want to ask, however, when it comes to permanent event infrastructure, which is one of the programs you referenced, I'm curious to know, I think the maximum was 10 or 15,000 perhaps. You know, we know how expensive it is to even build a gazebo these days, right? So I guess given your experience in this field, I'd be interested in knowing whether or not that, I know it may feel like a lot to us, like $15,000 certainly like is not it's not nothing, but it isn't a lot, right? I'm not sure if it tips the scales or not, especially when it comes to permanent event infrastructure, which some could argue could be in the millions. So I just would love to better understand from your perspective how these things are meaningful, and perhaps the permanent event infrastructure of which you speak is much more modest. But if you could paint the picture in terms of how something like that could be useful in a community such as ours.
Through you, I think the best thing that I will say, that I always say for CIPs, is it's not meant to be a handout, and it's not meant to solve all the problems. It is just meant to be like a hand up and an offering from the municipality to show commitment.
Okay.
I don't think it's any CIP is really a make it or break it. That's why often these are matching programs. However, I have seen numbers that are far lesser than the numbers in this CIP project. I've seen facade improvement programs for 2,500. So I think, I'm not a developer. I don't think I have enough guts to do that kind of work, but it's meant to, number one, just demonstrate municipal commitment. Number two, assist in some way. And again, I think these are healthy numbers. So I can't say that this would make it or break it. There are also a huge number of affordable housing CIP programs that, I think you're going to talk about that later, or your housing CIP, perhaps another day. But again, like those won't make or break housing projects. They are really just, again, just meant to support and give a hand up for projects that meet municipal goals. I hope that answers your question.
Oh, most certainly. It's just a reflection I've had in terms of the function of a CIP. And certainly you're correct. I think we've had that same discussion around affordable housing. So it's just more to understand how these things play out in other communities where we've seen these CIPs proposed or implemented. I accept that. Actually, I agree. I think the proposed incentive programs here for the various initiatives are quite healthy, right? They're, and I think in part, and perhaps this came, these numbers resulted in the discussion you had with operators and our planning staff. But from my perspective, because North Grenville still remains to some extent under the radar, we're not a well-known tourism destination. Lots of people are still bypassing us for Brockville or for Merrickville or Westport or what have you. I do think we still have years to go before Kemptville or North Grenville is really thought of as a highly sought after destination. I think we're certainly doing our part to make that possible. So I recognize that these tourism CIPs are really long game, if you will, to some extent, and also mobilize councils and staff internally to make sure that we're doing everything we can. So no doubt, I recognize the value in the numbers that are here. I'm not suggesting we go much higher. I'm just always curious about how it plays out with those who might be in a position to actually benefit from one of those CIP programs. The other question I had, and I understand the hour is late, and I'm being reminded that we have a consent agenda item to consider. I think it will be the appetite of council once we conclude this item to defer the affordable housing CIP discussion. But if I could just ask one question, and then I'll go to you, Deputy Mayor. Okay. You had something here around permeable drainage as an example of a program that an operator might want to pursue. And I just wanted to be clear, it wasn't evident to me that we allowed permeable drainage in the municipality of North Grenville, but I might be confused, or maybe that's an example you're using from a different municipality. I would love to see the opportunity to bring permeable drainage into the municipality, because I know we hear from time to time how valuable it is. And some of my colleagues were at a conference just this past week, and where I'm sure it was one of the topics on hand. But maybe Ms. Martin can clarify.
I think, Your Worship, so in the example that was given in the scenario, it would be for a site improvement. So say if someone were installing, say, like a sidewalk using permeable pavers, which would allow for more water filtration through
Yes.
compared to maybe say just asphalting an entrance.
Yeah.
That would be a sustainability top up. It's very site specific. I think the concept you're talking about is more of that low impact development that we see kind of on a larger scale for like plans of subdivisions, where now you're getting into bioswales and different permeable materials as part of a larger stormwater system. This would just be a sustainable portion of the property being developed. It wouldn't be a large scale item.
Okay, I appreciate that distinction. Thank you very much. I did have some other questions, but I'm going to park them given the hour, and I'm going to recognize Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. From one Nancy to another Nancy. I'm most familiar with the downtown CIP, and I believe it was first initiated in, I'm going to say 2012, 2013. Oh, no. I seem to recall it was quite a while ago, and it's gone through many different permutations. And one of them was expanding the focus area to include the downtown BIA. It was originally just what was called the Gateway, which is Sanders, Rideau, and Clothier. From my experience, there was a CIP existed for a year or two or three, and then we had the option as a council to renew it. And we've done that many times. It still exists. I'm not sure when it runs out. So first part of my question is, how long are you suggesting that this CIB be in place? I would recommend certainly more than just a year, because it takes a year to get people familiar with what's available, and then they start applying in the second year. But each time that it was renewed, there was tweaking to these programs depending on the uptake. In the case of the downtown CIP, the facade improvement was limited over time to just commercial properties rather than people's flower boxes and front porches and that kind of thing. So I'm wondering what your thinking is in terms of the length of the CIP would be in place, and whether we'd have an opportunity, after year one to tweak it. I mean, is it that flexible? And I guess maybe that's the question as much for Director Martin as to you, but what are your thoughts on that?
Through you, Madam Mayor, maybe I'll take a stab and let Amy add to it. But generally, when I write CIPs, I have a 10-year lifespan in mind. As we know, legislation changes, provincial priorities change, municipal priorities change, councils change. And so to have a toolbox that can be used for a longer lifespan, I think is valuable. So I always say 10 years. However, council can continue terms for as long as they want. I'm working for a municipality right now, and we've expanded the CIP for another 2 years. So it has now a 12-year lifespan. However, if there's not a lot of uptake, you can also shorten that. There are clear rules, I guess, in the draft CIP that we have written about amendments to the CIP. There are minor amendments, so tweaking eligibility criteria, requirements, application process, etc. Those would be minor. A major amendment would be adding a new program or increasing the incentive values or significantly, or reducing the community improvement project area. That would be a major amendment, and that would have to go through a public process. But minor tweaks here and there are expected and kind of built into the implementation framework.
Yeah, along those lines, in terms of what we can do with the CIP, is there, oh man, I lost the train of thought. I'm sorry. That's it. Sorry. You're off the hook for that question because it has not returned to me.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so I think at this point,
I knew it. I knew it.
Key performance indicators. Okay, so it's great that we are incentivizing. Will part of your final draft indicate in any way what is considered a success, and maybe so that we can judge about whether we're achieving the goals? In other words, if we have matching grants, how much have we incentivized versus not incentivizing? Thank you for your patience while I reclaim that question.
Through you, I'm glad that came back because that's a great question. And in the CIP, we have a monitoring program where we have identified things that annually the municipality might want to monitor. For example, number of applications approved, not approved, number of units incentivized, number of properties where landscaping has been improved. So we have identified a monitoring program with key KPIs that should be addressed, that can be tweaked as well.
okay. So thank you again, Nancy. It's nice to have another Nancy in the room, so appreciate your patience and your time. And obviously, you're a seasoned expert in these areas, and I think we're all very excited about what comes. I will recognize Councillor Sullivan very quickly, and then we're going to, I think, very quickly consider the recommendation which says that we have held a public meeting or are holding a public meeting. I'm confused about what's being asked of us in this moment.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just because the way that our reports are structured, the intent is that we did hold a public meeting under the Planning Act. I think it's just acknowledging that the public meeting occurred.
Okay, perfect. In the past tense. Councillor Sullivan, quickly.
I'll be quick. My phone told me it was bedtime too, and time for my eye drops. I just have a concern about how we're going to implement this and who's going to do the work and when this work's going to get done, because we currently have incentives in place for example, for cycling infrastructure. We have incentives in place. We have 4 or 5 people who are willing to take part in that incentive, but we can't do it. We've suspended that program because we don't have people to do it. So, I mean, this all sounds awesome and wonderful and will definitely help, but I don't see how we can actually implement this without people and time and resources. And we don't have what we need to do what we already have in place. So I think there has to be a plan for how we can possibly implement it and make it happen, because it all sounds good, but if it can't happen, we're...
And I think, Councillor Sullivan, the intent of tonight is to just hold the public meeting. There will be a further report to Council on the implementation strategy and what's possible, both from a fiscal and program perspective, recognizing that there's implications to staffing, there's implications in terms of the forthcoming budget. So noted, and I'm sure under Ms. Martin, you'll be bringing back a proposal for multi-year implementation, and we can have a further discussion at that time. So recognizing that we do hit a curfew in 5 minutes, I'm going to ask for a mover and a seconder for the motion that we have now held the public meeting under Section 28 of the Planning Act to consider a tourism community improvement plan. That has been moved and seconded. Councillor Strachan, and was it Deputy Mayor? Okay, thank you. And I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Excellent. Okay, with that, do we need to formally defer the affordable housing CIP public meeting, Ms. Martin?
Thank you, Your Worship. I would put something on the record just from the clerk's perspective that we canceled the meeting.
Okay.
And
Did
then
we cancel or did we defer?
You're not deferring it. You can't essentially you canceled the meeting, and we have to re-advertise and reschedule it.
It's just the word counseling feels a bit. I mean, canceling feels a bit awkward because we didn't want to cancel it, but we've literally run out of time. So
yeah,
I guess the meeting was not held effectively, right? So
perhaps the clerk has some suggested softer language.
Thank you. Yes, indeed.
I would suggest that we just use wording similar to that we've reached curfew for the evening.
Great.
And that per the procedural bylaw, we will move the remaining items to the next following meeting.
Excellent. That sounds wonderful. Who would like to move that? Councillor Strakian? And Councillor Sullivan, thank you very much. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. I know, but we're just dealing, oh, I see, because you referred to all items on the agenda. Right. Well, I'm sure you can modify that motion to, speak to everything but the BIA. I'm aware that the BIA motion is currently under consent. So council colleagues, we didn't address this matter last night because staff asked for it to be moved to tonight, I think just to ensure accuracy, and here we are. So looking for a mover and a seconder for this single item on the consent agenda, Deputy Mayor?
I wouldn't want to remove it from the consent agenda. Can we just go forward?
I'm asking for a mover and a seconder for the adoption of the consent agenda.
Yes.
So, and by virtue of adopting the
Yes.
consent agenda, we
I-
adopt this
I
item.
move
Yes, thank
to
you,
adopt
Deputy
the
Mayor.
consent agenda.
And Councillor Sullivan, you'll second. So again, this is to advance the item
Yeah.
and formally adopt the levy. So, but it appears under consent agenda, so we're moving and seconding the adoption of the consent agenda for which there is just one item. So with that, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Great. So all other matters except for confirmation bylaw and adjournment have been deferred as a result of the imminent curfew. So I'll go to confirmation bylaw. Councillor Strachan, do you mind moving the confirmatory bylaw as attached to this agenda? As seconder, Deputy Mayor, thank you. Calling the question. Thank you. And adjournment at 10:27. Looking for a mover and a seconder, Councillor Strachan and Councillor Sullivan. I'll call the vote. All in favor, and that passes. Thank you.